Welcome to the Agile Talks again. In the same day, in the same time, we are here with you. Today, I'm again excited because we will discuss about a different topic, and this topic includes lots of different mindset, lots of different practices, and lots of different principles. And we will discuss with Niels about the BetaCodeX. And BetaCodeX, I know it will be the new things for the lots of people, and I'm excited to learn these lots of new things together. So let's invite Niels and learn together. Welcome, Niels.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for accepting my invitation. So we have 1 hour, and some questions will be a bit challenging because BetaCodeX is very different. I'm excited to listen the answers. But let's start with the easy question. Who is Niels?
Who is Niels? I am founder of this community, the BetaCodeX network. I write books, so I published 11 books until now.
Oh,
Yeah, over the course of 20. I started this BetaCodeX thing. Well, I started to work with this when I started working with this. That was 20 years ago, in 2003. So 20 years ago now, and it was then called Beyond Budgeting. Some of you might have heard of Beyond Budgeting. Now we call it the BetaCodeX, and it has been research but also practice. So I've been consulting to organizations. I have spoken on many conferences, twice in Turkey as well.
oh, great.
I published a book. One of my books is published in Turkish, by the way, Organized for Complexity. And yeah, I work with companies. Like I'm in Berlin now. Today I talked with one client companies about cell structure design and how to do this kind of transformation. We will be talking about in this hour. Yeah.
Many thanks. And so let's continue the second standard of my questions. One of my questions. What is business agility from your perspective?
Yeah. What is business agility? That's an excellent question. I do not think it means much. I think it is a way of expressing that we do not know what to do, how to proceed with Agile. But this is a personal opinion. I'm not saying I'm right on this, but I think it expresses that we know that the Agile manifesto of software development is not enough, that Scrum is not enough. You've had this show with Jeff Sutherland, or two shows.
Yeah.
So Scrum is great, but I think we now know that it's not enough. We have to go beyond Agile software development. We have to go beyond Scrum to achieve this kind of transformation. And I think this business agility, to add business to the word agility, it indicates that we need to make it whole. We need to transform entire organizations. So I think the word indicates that we need to go further. Yeah. BetaCodeX is about exactly that. So that's a very nice connection to our topic today. Yeah.
Okay, let's continue the BetaCodeX. You said BetaCodeX is a community. I think lots of people will understand this is not community. This is maybe some of new framework, but you said this is not. This is community. So
Yes.
let's start again the new question. What is the BetaCodeX?
Yes, the BetaCodeX is a concept of organizing that is the opposite of command and control, we like to say. So fundamentally, it is a way of running organizations, of leading organizations, of structuring organizations in a way that it's the opposite of command and control. Put differently, if we assume that there is something like a waterfall kind of organization, command and control organization, which we all know with pyramid-like and so on, the BetaCodeX is the opposite model. If the problem is command and control organization, centralization, bureaucracy, waterfall. If this is the problem, then the solution is to find a better model of organizing. Now, this is the thing. This goes back 100 years. This is not new. There has been an epic war in the world of businesses that has been going on for at least 100 years. And most organizations have consciously or unconsciously opted for command and control. and centralized steering and centralization, bureaucracy, and all of that, and fear and all of this thing. And there have always been some organizations that have done the opposite. Companies like Toyota, Southwest Airlines, or Burzog, for example, they have adopted a different model, a contrarian model. And we call this other model the BetaCodeX. We call the command and control model the Alpha model or Alpha Codex, and BetaCodeX is the solution, the alternative. And here's the thing, this alternative, not many organizations are doing it. This is hard to find. Most organizations have done the wrong thing, the terrible thing. We all know it's wrong. Of course, in software development, the waterfall kind of software development associated with command and control has been rejected by the Agile community, and we want to go to another model. But here's the problem. Agile without beta, without this centralized way of running organizations, cannot really work. So we are in trouble.
Okay.
And the BetaCodeX is also a community, a movement, and everybody can be part of it. Every Agilist can be part of the BetaCodeX movement. That's free to join. And it's also a research community. So we do research around the BetaCodeX. We try to do it. We work on doing it. Like today, I met this client here, and they want to do it. So companies can do it, but we are also researching how to make it better. It's not a commercial community. Anybody can join by association and by joining the research.
Okay, how can we enroll this group, and how can we join? How can we join?
Well, the BetaCodeX itself, the concept is open source. Everybody can do it, of course. But to be part of the community, you have to join a research project. To learn about that, you can access betacodex.org, and there's all the information how to join the research. Yeah.
Many thanks. And the other question is about, you said, the decentralization. Lots of company, as you said, is working with that pyramid model. But they are saying, okay, the right one is decentralization model, but it takes too long. Maybe lots of companies talking about our transformation. We are in transformation more than 6 years, 7 years.
Yes.
And as we discussed before with you, before the session, Ilker said the first time, one of our friend, you can complete the transformation in 90 days. And I surprised. And as I know, it's come from BetaCodeX. So I want to listen the answer from you. How can we transform in that 90 days?
Yes, this is the big. I think everybody is looking for the solution of how to do transformation in the Agile movement, in the Agile scene. We all want to accomplish transformation. But the problem with Scrum, for example, as a way of doing Agile software development, Scrum is good, but Scrum is only part of this solution. If you have a command control organization with lots of silos and lots of bureaucracy and steering and fear and lots of control and micromanagement, Scrum will not get you here to the other model. It is not. You cannot do Agile transformation just with Scrum. Maybe we will talk about Agile frameworks in a moment. They are, of course, an attempt to help organizations transform, but they do not work. So we will talk about this in a moment, I think. But here's the thing, what we say at the BetaCodeX. Yes, Agile software development is terrific. Scrum is pretty cool, but it only works in the right context. If you try to do Scrum in a command and control organization, you invite all kinds of trouble. For example, your product owners will probably not be real product owners. Your Scrum masters will be frustrated. Your Agile coaches cannot help you. All the tools that you bring in, they only make the problems worse. So the BetaCodeX has historically also comes from a different point of view. It says, well, most organizations are alpha pyramid command and control organizations. If we transform them, then that's really Agile, and you can do Scrum to full benefit without using many Agile coaches, without the high cost of maintaining it. It will be a natural thing. Like Lean at Toyota, you will have Lean or Agile or Scrum at your organization. Yeah. So the BetaCodeX always has tried to outline, well, we have to, and this is like, I would compare this to a society. A society can opt for democracy
Mm-hmm.
or for dictatorship or authoritarianism. Both works for a while, this works for a while, but in the long run, you should have a democracy. Sorry for being political, but this is the thing we can have in a country like Germany, for example. We have now a democracy. We had fascism 70, 80 years ago. That was terrible. Now we have a democracy. Is transformation possible in Germany? Was it possible? Yes. We've done it. And the same way it can be done for entire organizations, and it takes 90 days. How do I know that agile transformation to the BetaCodeX takes 90 days? Because we discovered a way to time box not just software development, but to time box transformation. I am not the inventor of this idea. The inventor of this idea is Niels Pflaeging, a wonderful agilist from the United States. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He is, I think, one of the few people in the agile movement who has thought seriously about organizational development, how to make change happen. And he had this idea, well, you start together with all the willing, and you end together. So you time box a change. You start together, you end together, you time box change. And that, let's say, iteration, this big iteration or this big sprint of organizational development will take 90 days. That's a reasonable way of, as it is reasonable to say, well, to minimize the risk of software development, let's define a sprint of 14 days. That's a reasonable thing. The same way you can say, well, an organization can be transformed with everybody involved or the willing involved in 90 days. And this concept, it's called open space beta. So if you or any of your listeners want to learn more about it, look it up. Open space beta. It's open source. Everybody can use it. There's a handbook about it. There's lots of concepts around it. We've done this with several companies. This approach to agile transformation. It's new. We only invented it 5 years ago, based on Niels Pflaeging's work. He calls it open space agility, which is great, but it only works for software development areas, so to speak. Yeah. And Silke Hermann and myself, in 2018, we asked ourselves, how could this apply to entire organizations, an entire company, 2,000 people, 10,000 people? It could be a large Turkish company might have 20,000 people. So how can this work with 20,000 people in 90 days? And we have figured this out. This is the name of the approach, open space beta. It takes 90 days because it's time-boxed transformation. Yeah. And it has certain ideas like invitation, voluntariness. Everybody works the system together. And yeah. And we've done it a couple of times with clients. We know it works.
Okay, let me ask a bit detailed questions about these 90 days.
Yes.
Lots of companies think, okay, it's too short because you said 5,000 people needs to enroll this process. But we have lots of low skill process. We have mid management. And how can we work with mid management, and what will their role be? Lots of questions are coming. What do you think about this type of questions, maybe resistance?
Yes. No, it's not resistance. It's a misunderstanding. One of the big misunderstandings in organizational development, in agile, in the lean movement also, one of the misunderstandings is that we used to assume wrongly that the more people you have, the longer it takes, right? But that's a wrong idea. So, because then it would be fast to transform an organization of 20 people and much slower to do it with 20,000 people. But organizational transformation is more like quitting to smoke or losing weight or getting rid of alcoholism, for example. Yeah, it takes a while to quit smoking, with all the things that are connected to it, the patterns, the way we behave, the friends we behave, the way we party, and the friends we have, and so on. Yeah. So it takes a while, but it doesn't take longer or shorter for one person than it takes for 100 person. If you have one person that quits smoking, it takes a few years to really get rid of the habit. And with 20,000 people, when they all do it together, it also takes 2 or 3 years. It takes the same time. The same goes for organizational transformation. If we do it with all the willing together and change the system, then it will be fast. If we only try to fix people, it will not work. But if we try to change the system, we change the conditions of working, the context, also the way we pay people, the way the organization, the way we define leadership, the way the decision making is done, the way we work with the resources. If we change the entire system, then the change is fast. Why? Because that's like going from the football. Have you ever been in a football stadium?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now imagine you go to a football game in the afternoon. You dress up, you go there, and you meet some people there, and you will behave in a certain way in the afternoon, on a Saturday afternoon, let's say. Great football match, okay?
Yeah.
And then on the same evening, you go to the opera. Then the question is, can the same people that have been behaved in a certain way in the football stadium, could the same people behave well in the opera or in classical dance show, presentation? And the answer is, of course, they could, but they will dress differently. They will go there differently. There are different rituals, but people can behave in a way in the football stadium and in the opera. And this is the same thing. And this is the problem, I think, with Scrum and with Agile. We do not change enough. We do not change the conditions. We bring in Scrum, but we are still in the football stadium. We are not turning it into an opera or the other way around. We're not changing the circumstance or the context. So it doesn't really work. It's hard for people to then adopt to the new circumstance, or the circumstances seem to be the same. So in Scrum, it doesn't feel like Scrum, feels like half Scrum, or something is wrong. And the BetaCodeX, or this kind of transformation, is about changing the system so that everybody can easily develop the right patterns.
So this changing system means the changing organizational structure, or?
Yes, it means decentralization to the periphery. In this model, bosses command the organization from the top down. And in this logic, you give power to the periphery, to this part. It looks like a bagel, right? It's not a bagel. It's more like a peach, yeah? And you give power to the periphery. So you decentralize decision-making to teams in the periphery. They can be software development teams, by the way, yeah? So you decentralize decision-making, and you have to change all parts of the system. For example, eliminate annual planning, eliminate product managers, eliminate project managers, eliminate key accounters that you might have, to eliminate certain decision-making circles, certain management rules, yeah? So many things have to go away to make this kind of organization happen. This is really like creating a different kind of organization. Yeah, and this takes 90 days if you do it together with all the willing. Yeah, if you do it together with everyone who is willing to do the work together, then it's fast. Put differently, any organization that has started an agile transformation and hasn't accomplished it in 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 years, you are doing it all wrong. You're not changing the system. You are trying to make agile work within a bad system that cannot work. It will never, not even Scrum will fully work in this kind of system. That's the sad. It's not really sad. It's a sad reality. It's a reality. Yeah.
Okay, so if we change the system,
yes.
Okay, the question is some mid management. Do we need to fire someone?
No. That's a terrible question.
What will these guys do? Yeah.
But I was tempted to say yes, the agile coaches. The problem is not agile coaches. I hope not to insult anyone. The problem, of course, is not agile coaches. The problem is the role of the agile coach. Today, I had this client here, and we discussed why in this model, in command and control, it is logical to have product managers. Yeah. In this model, you cannot have product managers. For example, Toyota does not have product managers because product managers are an artifact of steering, of centralized control, yeah, of power in the center. And that does not work well with self-organization and agile and Scrum, really. It's a conflict. It's like in a Scrum team, you cannot have a powerful project manager. You should not have product managers at all in Scrum, of course. Yeah? You should have certain roles and then self-organization, team responsibility, and you cannot have that with, people at the top or a steering committee. Actually, SAFe could never work because it's too much hierarchy. It brings the logic of command and control and hierarchy and steering back into Scrum, and that's not a good way to do anything. Yeah, so the quest is really not for scaling Agile today. The quest is to get rid of fixed targets, of incentive systems, of too much control, of micromanagement. And Scrum alone cannot accomplish that. Scrum alone, in a way, is incomplete. Yeah. And if we want to really get Scrum, if we want to get the full benefit from Scrum, we must learn to transform entire organizations like this. And that means changing the system, changing the way we do leadership and management and organization.
So how can we start this transformation? You are saying the change the system. How can we change the system? So can we choose one small area to transform them in a 1 or 2 year, or the other?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Sadly, no. But the good news is also no, that's not necessary. We can transform entire organizations. It can be software development organizations or industrial organizations or service organizations or consulting companies or banks. It doesn't matter. If an organization has command and control, we know how to decentralize. Decentralization is a well-researched thing. We actually know a lot about decentralization. Teams must be small. Decision-making must be decentralized. You have to give power to teams in the periphery. They must own the clients, the client projects. They must, serve the external customer or client directly. And the center will serve the periphery so that the periphery can serve the external customer. We know all about how to make this happen. Yeah, this is not a big secret. And to make this change, we do not need many people. The organization can basically do this work, change work themselves with very little support. With something like a transformation coach. We call that a master of ceremonies. And they basically, secret to fast agile transformation is really to let the organization do it themselves. To not have too many consultants. Consultants like us, we are part of the problem in a way. Yeah, that doesn't mean that we are not useful, but we should do very little. The client should do the work. So the secret, I think, is we had this conversation here in Berlin today with the client. Does the company really want this? Do they want self-organization? Do they want agile or agility? Do they want decentralization? And if the client says yes to that, then you have a sponsor, and then you can help them do this kind of transformation with open space beta. Sounds simple. Of course, there are a couple of tricks to it, but in principle, it's the client company must really, really want this. And I think the world is prepared for this. Yeah. Otherwise, agile books or books like Reinventing Organizations or my own book, Organize for Complexity, they wouldn't sell, they wouldn't be read if people are starting to understand that this kind of transformation is necessary, I think.
Okay. And what do you think about the agile frameworks? You said you gave some information about that, but
yes, I think they indicate that we are lost in the agile movement, or the agile movement is lost. Yes. As with business agility, I think this is another indicator that the agile movement is lost, because I think historically what happened is, Scrum was suggested, and of course other ways of agile teamwork like Kanban were suggested. So we have all these concepts of teamwork, software development teamwork, and of course we all know that in principle these things work. They can work for a team, but there are limitations in the systems, in the context of organizations, companies. Limitations that make it difficult for teams to sustain Kanban or Scrum. So the solution of the agile industry has to be to appeal to managers in companies everywhere, has been to suggest these frameworks. Scrum at scale, SAFe, less, Unfix, I think, is another one. Yeah. So all these frameworks are non-frameworks, of course. They don't want to be called frameworks anymore, but they are. I think they are attempts to make agile software development or Scrum or Kanban happen in command and control organizations. So we give managers something that they know, this kind of stacking and hierarchy of hierarchies and grouping. The problem with all agile frameworks, even those that call themselves non-frameworks, is that they are hierarchical. They are not aimed at decentralization.
Hmm.
I think the way to make Scrum and Kanban and so on to make it work better is to decentralize decision making more and more and more, not to find ways to coordinate lots of Scrum teams. So this, in a way, I think the rise of agile frameworks indicates that the agile movement is lost. Yeah,
Okay.
it has become a big industry, but I think the agile movement hasn't made anybody happy with these frameworks, with these tools ultimately.
Okay. And the other question is about the high turnover. Lots of, as you know, now companies are facing the high turnover. In
Yes,
this world, how can they create that decentralized and self-autonomous and cross-functional teams?
yes. I think the solution is cross-functional teams. I think in Germany, for example, we have this discussion. Not sure if you have that in Turkey, for example. We have a discussion that supposedly there are too not enough qualified people, like software developers. We don't have enough people, basically,
Yeah.
qualified people, workers, and so on. Yeah, there is this story, this narrative that we have a people problem. Or there are not enough people who are willing to work or who are qualified enough. And so, I think that's not true. I think that, as I said here, and I think this is worth repeating, most organizations are structured like this in functional silos. We have some agile projects going on that might happen here, some Scrum teams and Kanban teams and so on, or project teams. There are all kinds of islands of happiness, as I like to say. But the problem with command and control is that, as the Americans say, this sucks. It stinks. It's a stinking model. It doesn't work. Command and control, with all the fear and the slowness, the non-agility associated with this, it doesn't work. So organizations that are still working like this, from the top down and bottom up, and centralized steering and frameworks and rules and bureaucracy, people will try to leave. And I think that is what most organizations, every organization that has this kind of model that is centralized, hierarchical, and command control, suffers. There's a lot of suffering, and people will run away. They become agile coaches or become entrepreneurs or freelancers. They run away because ultimately this model just sucks. Yeah. So this happens I think to most companies. Even agile companies have this problem. I think that they haven't moved away from this model. So I think high turnover is almost always a result of an organizational model that stinks. It's an effect, like high turnover or people being ill all the time. It's a reaction to an organizational model that's wrong. And the more people cherish, self-organization, freedom to act, freedom to take responsibility, and so on, the more people cherish self-organization, agility, I think, is a good word for that as well, the more sensitive people react to command and control. It's like waterfall stinks, and this is waterfall for entire organizations. Actually, waterfall, some people doubt that it has ever existed. Probably it has never existed, but it's the way of doing software development in a command and control organization, right? It never really worked, but in this kind of organization, you had to do it like waterfall, more or less. Yeah. And it's terrifying. It never worked. It's not satisfying. It's not agile, not iterative enough, there's too little self-organization possible in this model. So people just run away. They quit. And that's not even a problem. It's just a healthy reaction to the wrong model. So we must overcome this trap.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The other question is about, yeah, you said the system thinking, and that systems
Yeah.
are managing by the leaders. So let's talk about a bit agile leadership. But what's your thoughts on agile leadership?
Yes. That's also a dangerous word
Hmm.
because I like to say the following. This is like the short version that I can offer.
Hmm.
I like to say that agile leadership the word shouldn't even exist. I like to say that agile is leadership,
Mhm.
and it is self-organization. Self-organization. Organization. Oh my God. Oh my God, this is terrible today, right? Self-organization. I think you can imagine what's going on.
Yeah.
Agile is self-organization. Agile is leadership. It's wrong to say agile leadership because it's two times the state. That's why it's crazy to say VUCA. Some people say VUCA. Do you use this
Yeah,
term as
yeah,
well?
yeah. Lots of time. Yeah, we
But
are.
VUCA is the same as complexity and uncertainty and all these other things. They are all the same. VUCA is saying four times the same: uncertainty, insecurity, etc. It's all the same. Dynamics is also the same. So saying VUCA means like saying four times the same word. We are starting to do this in Agile. We start saying Agile leadership, self-organization one day, and transformation and whatever. We put the words together, they mean nothing anymore.
Hmm.
The point is this: Agile means putting people in charge and to create a high level of self-organization. Otherwise, it's not even Agile, it's fraud, I think.
Hmm.
It's a lie. It becomes a lie if we do not say, well, Agile is self-organization. It's putting teams in charge of software development, not bosses. Ultimately, we put the client in charge, right? In a way. But the way to do the work is to give the work to teams with the right roles. That's Scrum, basically, to say, no, we don't need a project manager or powerful steering committees. We have to make the team responsible, work in the right way, iteratively, for example, and then they can take authority. That's self-organization. Yeah. And I say, if you have a high level of self-organization, that is a high level of leadership. Put differently, waterfall is an enemy of leadership. Command and control is an enemy of leadership. Bureaucracy is an enemy of leadership. And real leadership is to have high levels of self-organization. That's what we have to strive for. Yeah. So, what is my thought on agile leadership?
Mhm.
It's the same. Agile and leadership is the same, and we have to do that. It's like asking, what is free democracy? What do you think of free democracy? No. Democracy is always free, but not just you being free, but also me being free. And our freedom is limited by each other's freedom. We must all be free. Yeah. So it's interesting what we have made with Agile and how we are struggling with. This may sound like philosophy or like detail or of the detail or something, or very abstract, but this is very much the essence of Agile. The essence of Agile is that it means putting people in charge for the work, giving people back autonomy and responsibility.
So the other question about, yeah, we create a great teams and team of teams. What do you
Yes,
think about team of teams? How can they align or how can they communicate?
yes.
Do we need a leadership in that team of teams?
In the BetaCodeX, we have a very specific way of thinking about teams because everybody's talking about teams of teams and so on, and usually it means hierarchical stacking.
Hmm.
Lots of teams at the bottom, and then you consolidate that up. So that's the spirit of pyramid structure.
Yeah.
In the BetaCodeX, we have another way of looking at an organization as a system. And once markets become complex, this is why I wrote a book about organizing for complexity. Markets have become complex. This already happened in the 1980s and the 1970s and 1980s. This happened. Markets became highly globalized, very complex, very surprising, very competitive. So today, every company, you told me about the company you work with in Germany, right?
Mhm.
Everybody in Turkey can now work with somebody in Germany, and we have become competitors. And every company in Germany competes with the company in Turkey. And in the US and Brazil and India, we are highly globalized. Not just because of the internet, but also because of the internet and technology. So what does that do to organizations? It has a very simple effect on organizations. When markets turn complex, this is the organization, all right?
Okay.
When a market becomes complex, and this has happened everywhere in the world since the 1980s, then the market starts to steer the organization. This is one of the problems, one of the reasons why waterfall software development never worked. Because software development is highly steered or commanded by external market pull, market demands from clients. The client, for example, at the beginning, doesn't know exactly what he wants or she wants. So the requirements change all the time. So it's lunacy to suggest, we will develop this in 2 years and then we deliver. It's much better to make software development iterative because markets are complex. So software development was born in a way, or at least since the 1970s or 80s, it turned highly complex. Yeah. What does this do to an organization? The part of the organization that meets the client or the customer is called the periphery, the outside of the organization. Yeah? These teams meet the client. This is called the periphery. These we call these things here a cell. This is a cell. It's another cell. These are business teams of an organization. This organization here in this example has 7 business teams, right?
Yeah.
7 business teams in the periphery. Okay, there can be other teams in an organization, and those other teams belong to the center. Let's draw a small company here. It has only 2 teams in the center, 2 cells in the center. The other teams are in the periphery. This is the team of teams. A team of teams in complexity must be decentralized. And that is something that most people in the Agile community, I think, have not yet understood. In complex markets, decision-making must be not in the center, but in the periphery. The periphery sells products, maybe software development, for example, a service, is sold to the client. The client pays for it. So the periphery earns money, and the periphery buys what it cannot do by itself, like bookkeeping or accounting or electricity. Also, it can buy it in the market or from the center. And this is the team of teams in a complex organizations. Organizations must be networks like this, not pyramids. It is no use to steer software development teams, Scrum teams, Kanban teams from the center, to control them with commands and key targets and so on, and indicators. Or what's missing in Scrum is really this. Scrum never dared to ask who pays for this and let the client pay. If there's a Scrum team, a software development team, who pays the bill? How much does a sprint cost? We never talked about these things. And in Beta, we say, well, if you have a software development business, let's imagine this is a software development company, and we have these 7 software development teams. They all have an external client, and the client pays for it. Then it shouldn't be so difficult to make this self-organizing. Yeah, but the teams are paid by the external customer. That's the idea of a Beta organization, of a decentralized organization.
And what do you think about the HR team? Because as you know, HR team is managing is lots of these hiring and firing things. So how can we put that HR teams in that beta codex?
Yes, HR. Yeah, it
We are
is.
talking about, so sometimes we are talking about the teams needs to hire someone, the teams needs to fire
Yes,
someone. Is the
yes,
same or beta codex? What is beta
yes.
codex saying about this?
Okay, here's one piece of the answer is this. In a Beta organization, if you do this, and this is not theory, we have found cases of these A beta company, an organization like this, they will say the recruiting process, hiring people, is not done by HR. It's done by the teams. The teams should do the recruiting. There might be some support from the center, HR or so, but ideally, they do it themselves. This practice, it exists in some companies. Google has done it. They did it for decades. I'm not sure if they are still doing it, and it would be terrible loss if they don't do it anymore. But they were, I think, one of the companies that mastered this very well. Toyota also does it. We call this practice peer recruiting. Peer recruiting. It means a team hires new team members. And that is a radical shift. It means that teams look out for new team members and recruit them and do the interviews and select them. And if one team member says, no, we don't want to hire this person, you cannot hire this person. That's what peer recruiting means. Peer recruiting can mean, okay, there's a general manager, a company owner or so. That person also wants to interview the candidates. This person can do that, but they cannot vote more. Their vote is not more powerful than everybody else's vote, which means everybody can, let's say, reject a candidate, but nobody can overrun. So if at Google, for example, they created it in this way. In the old days, they said at least 7 people must interview every candidate, and if only one person rejects the candidate is out. Cannot be hired. That is peer recruiting. It's very powerful. It means also, and this is one of the things as well that's missing in Scrum or in Kanban, we have not even thought yet about empowering teams that much. Teams should do their own recruiting fundamentally. There can be some HR help with the job, postings in the internet and so on. But basically, the recruiting should be done by teams. Yeah. In a small organization, maybe even everybody should recruit together, or most people should recruit new candidates in a small company. Yeah. But fundamentally, teams should hire new team members, and that means a big change for HR. HR, we should do much less of HR. Many HR practices are not agile.
Yeah.
No, they're not self-organizing enough. They do not allow decentralization. So HR needs to change, of course. Obviously. It's like finance, for example. When my career started as a finance manager, as a controller, and then I learned that budgeting, for example, doesn't work. No company should do annual planning or budgeting. It's a crime against agility. It's a crime against self-organization. It's a crime against decentralization. So an organization like this should never have budgets. It shouldn't have, HR people doing much of the recruiting. It cannot have fixed targets or bonus systems. Yeah. And we figured out these things over time, that there are many enemies of Agile.
And I think budgeting is the hardest process in my experience, because this is the budget and the money. When we start talking about money, leadership is changing directly.
Yes. If you have budgeting, you take away people's power to do the work. It is totally opposed to Scrum, by the way. How can you run a Scrum team if you do not have authority over your time and your money? The idea of a beta organization, a decentralized organization, again, this is the BetaCodeX, what a BetaCodeX organization looks like, right? And the idea is the periphery earns the money by doing work for the client pays, so they have the money. There's no need for a budget. They are a business. They make money. They have a margin. Yeah. Now the center, where does this? Because the periphery gets money from clients. Where does the center get the money? How do they survive? How do they pay their bills, their salaries? The answer is the center can only survive if they sell valuable services to the periphery. If the center doesn't sell valuable services to the periphery, and if the periphery doesn't pay for those services, the center would die. Yeah. So how to fix HR? Making it a service cell that serves the periphery, and the stuff that the periphery doesn't pay for will die.
Hmm. Let's talk about the again the leadership. One more question about leadership.
Yes.
So, if we, yeah, our CEO changed, and as you know, maybe system will change, and we will start maybe traditional way again. What do you think about that leadership changing, and if the leadership change, and how can we survive in this world? As you know, new CEO is coming in the company, and he or she is saying, "Okay, let's start new strategy or let's start new way of working." What do you think about that? How can we uh, face with this type of challenge?
Yes, I think it's helpful to remember that there are companies that have been decentralized and
Mhm.
self-organized and highly agile for many, many decades.
Hmm.
One of the best examples in the world is Toyota. All right. Toyota has had several CEOs. I think they just changed. They just had a change in CEOs, but all these CEOs of Toyota understood the power of self-organization and decentralization, the power of beta, so to say, which they call the Toyota way. Yeah, TPS sometimes. Yeah, some people call it lean, but at Toyota they call it the Toyota way fundamentally. Yeah, so it is possible to have a long history with many changing, executive teams and CEOs, and still maintain this model.
Hmm.
Handelsbanken in Sweden has achieved the same. They became highly decentralized like this in 1971. That's the year I was born. It's a long time ago, 50 years ago. For 50 years, they have had this model with different CEOs. Yeah. So, is it possible to maintain an agile way of organizing and to deepen it and make it better and better and better and better? Yes. But of course, these your CEOs or the people at the top must be educated in this way. They
Hmm.
must understand this model, and this education, we haven't done enough of it. Put differently, I think in the agile movement, we have not yet. Most people, or too few people in the agile movement, have learned to talk the language of CEOs and to make this case for transformation. We still have to learn it. Yeah, instead of selling agile tools, agile scaling frameworks, agile coaching to companies, we have to start to sell them transformation. And that means they have to understand this model. They have to understand self-organization and decentralization. And nobody, wakes up in the morning and understands this. This must be learned. It's like a religion or something. Yeah, it must be
Mhm.
learned. It's like reading. You must learn to read, practice it. And beta must be learned and thought through as well. It's like
Okay.
Scrum. Nobody woke up in the morning and had the idea, oh, Scrum, that's a great idea. No, people had to observe and learn and develop it, and that work has to be done for entire organizations. I think. And that's the secret to better, better, better leadership, much better leadership.
Okay. And the last question, and we
Mhm.
have maybe nine or yeah, six, maybe 9 or 8 minutes. The
Good.
last.
Yes.
And what advice would you give the companies and maybe the agile coach? You said about some things about agile coach, but what advice would you give the companies? Maybe three advice.
Yes, to all agile coaches and everybody doing agility, learn about organizational transformation, learn about decentralization, learn about open space beta. Take a look at Toyota, take a look at Deming, for example. I'm just publishing right now a book about Edwards Deming, one of the thinkers, thought leaders of quality and lean and the Toyota way. Edwards Deming, fantastic figure. He died in 1993, a long time ago, 30 years ago, and still he already understood how this kind of organization worked. So we have a lot to learn still from the pioneers of this kind of organizational model, like Toyota, Burzog in the Netherlands, or Southwest Airlines in the United States, or W.L. Gore, Handelsbanken in Sweden. there's a lot to learn about this kind of organization, and I suggest to start at BetaCodeX.org. We have a lot of material there, white papers and videos and book recommendations, all of it, and also to study the open space beta approach, which is how to get to this kind of organization in 90 days. There is a lot to learn, and I know that many people in the Agile movement have learned a lot about about Scrum, about Agile coaching, Agile leadership, and so on, Agile scaling frameworks. We got all these qualifications, but beyond that, it's important to understand how organizations really change. How does organizational development work? So this is my recommendation. Learn about these things, how to transform an entire organization, how to decentralize. Why is decentralization so important? And also, how to change the minds of many people in organizations. We have to really educate people beyond certifications. We have to educate client managers, managers at client firms about this way of working, this new way of working with this alternative decentralized model of organizing, and they don't know anything about it. So that's part of my recommendation to every Agilist in the world is take a good look at this. This is worth studying because this is the future. The future is not more Agile coaching. The future is decentralization, self-organization, actual leadership. And we need to learn how not just to, help companies adopt Agile frameworks or tools, but how to really change their minds. And I think that's a matter of learning, really studying and didactics and consulting, to learn consulting and not just training. That's also, I think, a big topic for the future.
I think lots of secret in that last two topics. Yeah, adaptive frameworks and consulting part.
Yes.
And many thanks, Niels. I think it was good conversation for me. I took lots of notes. And many thanks to accept my invitation and share your knowledge and about BetaCodeX. And
Yes.
I checked the website. I found lots of things. And I was saying I have 2 books, but after you said I have 11 books, I'm saying I need to write more.
Yes. There's a list of book recommendations on BetaCodeX.org. It's, I think, 60 books, and all of them are really good. So pick any books off the list. Some of them are very cheap, and it's because they are old, and so you buy them used, and it's a lot of things to study. Yeah, lots of good stuff.
Okay, we have lots of stuff to do, so lots of material to read. Many thanks again. Thank you, and see you. Have a good night and have a good evening for all our participants. See
Thank
you.
you. It was a great conversation. Let's make the world more agile. Let's make the world a more agile place.
Yeah.
See you
Our
soon.
goal is this. See
Let's
you.
keep learning.